So good evening, everybody. Are there any Meath supporters in the congregation? For the last Novena next week, you might have to say a prayer for Meath at the start of Mass, Father John. I'm only joking. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. Invitations like these are, I suppose, opportunities not to neglect the grace that I have been given, as we heard in the first reading, Paul's letter to the Corinthians, that if we are lucky enough to experience God's grace in our life, and grace is a gift, it's something special that we've all been given, and that's why we're here tonight, and for those tuning in as well, that we must do something about it. So these opportunities give me a moment to pause, to reflect, to take a break from the madness of family life, married to Aisling and a father of 4 lovely kids, and also working in UCD, my full-time role there in Gaelic games and sports and elite level scholarships, and then also managing Loud over the last couple of seasons, which has been a real joy. So taking a moment to relax and to reflect on what it is I believe in and how I can share part of that with you here this evening that ties in with the theme on Pilgrims of Hope. So I'm going to meander through my life for the next 10 or 15 minutes and try and tie it into that theme, Pilgrims of Hope. But I want to begin by just looking at the meaning of both words. What is a pilgrim and what is hope? And then join them together in our Christian and Catholic context and our faith. So firstly, what is a pilgrim? A pilgrim is a person who embarks on a journey, often long and challenging, sometimes physical, but most importantly, spiritual. So that's what a pilgrim is. We are all pilgrims here tonight. What is hope? Hope is a feeling of expectation, where the outcome involves something positive. Hope is a belief and a faith for a brighter future. So now that we've looked at what it means to be a pilgrim and what it means to be a pilgrim of hope, where does our Christian faith come into it, and what is it that we are hoping for? And this is something I feel very strongly on, and it absolutely is a grace that has been given to me from my parents initially, and has been developed over the years. I'll come on to that in a moment. But very simply, as Christian pilgrims of hope, what are we looking for? We're looking to deepen our relationship with Jesus Christ. And it's as simple and as easy and as obvious as that. In seeking to deepen and become closer to Jesus Christ, we become filled with the gifts of the Holy Spirit, gifts and fruits of the Holy Spirit. Our lives are enriched. Our way of being in the world with one another, our family, our friends, our colleagues, the environment are just so much better. But here is the challenge. We are human, we are sinners, we have faults, we have weaknesses. And like all journeys, we meander and we go off in all sorts of different directions. And I still do that, not as much as I used to. And I'll share a couple of stories with you in a moment from when I went to college in Maynooth. So, as a pilgrim of hope, I'm just going to speak about my spiritual journey in what has influenced my deepening relationship with Christ from my earliest memories. So there's 4 key areas here that I'll share with you this evening. And as I'm speaking, if there's anything that jumps out to you that reminds you of your own upbringing or own experiences, I would say stop listening to me and just go with that thought. Maybe close your eyes and see what the Spirit is saying to you. And what will be, will be. Or if you are getting tired of listening to me, just close your eyes anyway and nod off for a few minutes and have a bit of a break. So firstly, my pilgrimage of hope, it began at home with my parents. Both are still alive, Mary and PJ. I'm the fifth of 9 kids, and our local church is Garden Street Parish. Anyone who has been up at games in Croke Park of a Sunday, a lot of people would attend Garden Street. It's not too far from Croke Park. But my earliest memories of church were me and my siblings sitting in a pew. Garden Street Church is quite a big building and quite a wide pew to get all of us in. And you'd be sitting on the pew. My mother would be on one end and my father would be on the other end, and depending on how well you were behaving, you either moved closer to my mother or you were pushed down the line to my father, and you get the old little smack on the knee to shut up and pay attention. But it was always fun and always done for the right reasons. But my earliest memories of going to church, and this is true, is I always felt a sense of belonging. I always felt like I was cared for. And I suppose luckily and fortunately, I definitely have been given a grace that I had a sense of something greater going on. I didn't always, nor do we now, and that's, I guess, the mystery of our faith and the mystery of the Trinity. We don't always fully understand in our head what is happening, but if we can move from our heads into our hearts, that's where some of those graces I really enjoyed. But my earliest memories of going to Garden Street was fun. We got involved as altar service from a young age. We were taught music by a brother, Tom Phelan, a Jesuit brother. We learned guitar, we learned tin whistle. We were in the parish church on a Monday and a Tuesday. There was a youth group. We went down to Knock. We had all sorts of wonderful and enjoyable experiences. And while not always knowing what was going on, it was just a place that I felt safe, I felt loved, and I felt like I belonged to something. And that is still very much of where I am today. Through my involvement in Garden Street, which again is a Jesuit parish, since changed just recently, but a Jesuit parish for a long time, I began to swim in the local secondary school, which is called Belvedere College. And Belvedere College is a Jesuit college. St. Ignatius lived 500 years ago in northern Spain, and his spirituality, and again, I think etymology is the study of the origins of words. And when you look at pilgrim, when you look at hope, when you look at the word spirit, spirituality, it's important that we dive into them to get a better sense of what they actually do mean, to kind of help us deepen our own understanding of who we are and where we're trying to get to. But Ignatian spirituality was taught to us in Belvedere formerly, but more so through experiences of volunteer work with the local St. Vincent de Paul Society, visitation to the elderly in the area, the annual Belvedere College Sleep Out, and loads of different other opportunities for us from a young age to get involved and to give back. And to anyone involved in youth groups here and to a lot of young people attending today, if you can create opportunities for young people to give back to the community and to the environment, that enriches their souls and that gives them a taste of what it means to be more Christ-like and to deepen that personal relationship with God. So from those active experiences, I began to think a lot more about what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be in a Jesuit school, and I began to look at and study more aspects of Ignatian spirituality, and I'm going to share them here with you, some of the key areas which are very much part of my everyday being. I'm not perfect by any means, but they still continue to influence me to this day. Ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam, AMDG. It's Latin for the greater glory of God, and in some churches, and it can be up above the altar by the cross. And what we were taught in school is that whatever it is you're doing, if you can do it for the greater glory of God, you are making God happy. God as a parent, God as mother, God as father, Our Lady, you're making your parents happy. That whatever it is you're doing, if you do it for the greater glory of God and it's adding value to someone else's life, well then that is prayer. Okay, that is living, that is making our Father happy, and that's something which stands to me today. So we used to have to write AMDG on the top left-hand corner of our copybooks, and in each subject, whether it's maths, science, or religion, or wherever we may have been studying, we used to write. We had to write that down. So I still write that down. One of my friends, James Downey, a few years ahead of me, he's involved with Loud. He played professional rugby for Munster and Leinster and Ireland. He works as an agent for rugby players now, and James still writes that down, AMDG, that whatever he's trying to do, he's doing it for the greater glory of God. And that's a moral compass which helps you navigate through this life. The other thing I learned from Ignatian spirituality is trying to be a man or person for others, and that whole concept of curus personalis, again, which is care of the person. So how and what we do can we help those who are around us? The next one, and this is hugely important because this is how we really deepen our relationship with Christ, which is the journey of hope that we're on. Okay? Because if we said a pilgrim is a person who embarks on a journey, and that hope is a feeling of expectation for a positive outcome, when you deepen your relationship with Christ through prayer, through voluntary works, through giving back, through the sacraments, you are deepening your relationship with Jesus, and your life becomes fulfilled and it becomes enriched. The examen prayer, EXAMEN, was something we were taught in school, and it's something I tried to practice on a daily basis with myself and my wife Aisling, if she's not giving out to me for not putting the kids down properly or whatever could be going on in the house that I've taken my eye off. But with our children as well, Patrick is 7, Aveen is 6, and we have twins, Donica and Ava, who are 2.5, and they were up at 2:45 this morning to 6 o'clock. And if I do yawn here, that's why. And I may have had a few pints for Father's Day yesterday, as well as celebrating the win over Clare. But we tried to teach Patrick and Aveen to look back over their day, which is what the examen prayer is, and to look at what was good and to give thanks to God for those experiences and the people that you've met, and to look at the things that mightn't have been so good, whether you were offended. And we heard a bit of that in the gospel today about those who are looking for more from you. How do you deal with that? But then you also look at how were you today in yourself, in your personal relationship with the divine within, how you were with your loved others and with those around you, and you're just trying to make tiny little improvements day on day. And sometimes we have a blowout, you got to say sorry, ask for forgiveness, and then you got to move on. So, quick recap, we're all pilgrims of hope. My family has influenced me through bringing me to church. The church influenced me, and I kind of skipped the gap there. I went swimming in Belvedere College. I ended up going to Belvedere College through a late great Jesuit brother, Eamon Davis, through the swim club. Through Belvedere College, I became involved in a group called Shliela, Irish for Another Way, which was a Jesuit outreach program for young adults, 18 to 35. I became a member of the Garden Street Gospel Choir. I went volunteering overseas to Columbia on 2 occasions. And on the very first time I went to Columbia, I met Christ in 2 people who were studying theology minute. Theology was not down on my CEO at the time. So Elaine Brown and Christina Doyle. And 10 of us went over to Bogota in Colombia, and we spent 4 weeks over there working in an orphanage, having a lot of fun, a lot of dancing as well, and great crack. But we certainly worked hard during the day, and we prayed in the local convents and the local Jesuit theologate, and a really wonderful experience. But we spent 6 months preparing for that trip. It was a period of fundraising, but more so almost spiritually trying to fundraise and to build your own strength for what we were going to see over there, and to have God part of that journey. But Christina and Elaine were in their 2nd year of theology minute, and I remember the moment very clearly. And this is why, well, it's one of the reasons, many reasons, I believe in God and the existence of a divine being in us and in the world. Shelbourne Soccer Club. Has anyone ever gone to a match in Tolka Park? Years, yeah. So League of Ireland's, we were having a fundraiser there, and we were leaving the fundraiser. We'd rented out the bar, and the 2 girls said to me, "Ger, you should change your CEO. That you would love theology minute." And I was walking home that night, because the family home was just off towards Estuary, and at the corner of Richmond Road, at the where it meets the bridge at Fagan's pub, I genuinely had an epiphany and an experience of God saying to me, "Change your CEO, go to minute, study theology." I can get into that again on another occasion, but I changed my CEO. I went to minute. I did 3 years of an undergrad, and then I did 2 years of a full-time master's in theology, pastoral theology. And pastoral care is, again, it covers a broad range of parish activities, and that was something I went on to study for full time for 2 years, working in a parish in Ballymun, working in a nursing home, and just a truly incredible experience. And I'll tell you a quick story about the nursing home. I haven't even gotten it written down here, but on a Friday, St. Poppins was the name of the nursing home just in Ballymun. And Father Jerry was my mentor, and I was there for 6 months supporting the priest in whatever way was needed. And I was thinking about priesthood as well at the time. But we would go into the nursing home at St. Poppins every Friday to say Mass. And I suppose after maybe a month, 4 or 5 Fridays, Father Jerry probably felt that I was okay to go in on my own. And I don't know what he went off doing, but whether he went off playing golf or something, I don't know. But I started going into the nursing home on my own, and I would lead a liturgy, and I would bring in the Holy Communion from the church, and then I would give it out to the people in the nursing home. But what was incredible about my experience in the nursing home was the elderly people would come out and they would say, "It's great to have a young priest here," and I would tell them, "I'm not a priest," and they say, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I says, "Well, what are you doing here?" But no, I says, "I'm helping out the priest," and I says, I'm a lay student, and I'm helping out the priest where I can." And so they're kind of nodding at me, and after about 2 minutes, he said, "Well, okay, Father, thanks very much." But so I didn't pretend to be a priest, Bishop Dennis and Father John, but I got tired of explaining my situation to the same person on numerous Fridays, and sometimes numerous people. But anyhow, it was a lovely experience. But for my time in Minute, I meandered big time, and I think about the Gospel of Luke and the story of the prodigal son, which we're all familiar of. And there's a lovely image outside the headmaster's office in Belvedere of Caravaggio painted this. I don't know if you're familiar with it, anyone here, but it's the father welcomes home the prodigal son, and the son is on his knees, almost begging for forgiveness, and the father puts his hand over the son's shoulders. And if you look closely at the painting, I don't know if anyone's ever seen this before. One hand is male and the other hand is female. And it just talks about God, while yes, it's in terms of context, we refer to God as He, but God is Mother, God is Father, and God is there to protect us. And no matter how much we meander, which I definitely did, particularly during my undergrad in Maynooth, chasing the transient joys of this world, which are short-lived, but you come away feeling unfulfilled and a bit of spiritual desolation on occasion during my time in Maynooth. I always felt when I went back to God, when I went back to church, when I went back to prayer, that I began to feel and experience that grace of God. So in my daily life, in my own prayer, there's two things which I have taken from Maynooth, and as best as I can, I try to pray Lauds, which is morning prayer. I try to pray Vespers, which is evening prayer, and then the night compline is a lovely prayer as well. And I try to tie that in then with my examen, and it's that structured type of prayer where, for those of us playing sport, for those of us learning a new skill, for those of us who are retired and you're taking up a new activity, the more you kind of practice something, almost the easier it becomes and the more fulfilled you are. And I have found that the more structured or disciplined I was in my prayer, the happier I was becoming, the better husband I was, the better father I was. But a bit like training and sport, you could be doing everything right and you still don't get picked for the team, but you have to stick at it. And that's true for my faith as well, and all of our faiths. And I'm sure no more than the gentleman behind me as well, that there's times where you're doing all the right things, but you could be just going through a bit of a bad phase and God has given you a different challenge, but you have to stick at it. So that brings me into managing loud. And Romans 8, chapter 8, verse 18, there's an awful lot of lads in Loud go to Mass. And we were chatting with Bishop Dennis and John. The people of Loud are claiming St. Bridget because she was born in Faughard, so I'm told. But these men here will clarify it, and we'll have to take their word for it. But there's certainly something spiritual and holy about the playing group in Loud, and I'm not saying that jokingly. And what I learned in school was, and through Ignatian spirituality, that an imposed faith is no good to you. It's a proposed faith. So you need to propose things instead of imposing things. So you come with the carrot instead of the stick, because there's more meaning in it. So that part of Ignatian spirituality is part of how I coach. And when I began to see the spiritual hunger and interest that was there amongst the group, I began to use some spiritual references and scripture references to help the lads understand the playing journey that they were on. They were pilgrims of GEA, trying to reach the Holy Land, which was, for Loud, in their context, 6 to 8 years, the Delaney Cup, to bring that home for the first time. So Romans chapter 8, verse 18, I'm going to paraphrase it here from memory. The suffering that you're currently going through is nothing compared to the joy that is to come. So I'll say that again. The suffering that you're currently going through is nothing compared to the joy that is to come. I know there's about 8 or 9 of those Loud guys who have put that up on their wall, they've put it up on their profiles, and they've looked at it on a daily basis. And that they were ad maiorium Dei gloriam, for the greater glory of God, were giving everything for the people of Loud, for their teammates, for the cause, and that the suffering that they were going through would eventually be rewarded by winning a Leinster Championship. And that's where faith is very much part of my life and part of how I coach and teach the Loud lads. The last thing I just want to share with you in terms of my time in Maynooth, I began to develop a real devotion to the Eucharist and adoration in particular. And I could sit in adoration for sometimes hours, sometimes minutes. But I would ask some of you here, if it's something you haven't done before, it could be something you could add to your spiritual diet to help deepen your relationship with Christ, because that is the be all and end all. That is the X factor, as Mary said, to become more Christ-like. And adoration is one of those things which, certainly for me, when you enter into it, you just come away enriched. You feel enveloped by something greater going on. You have to get out of your head and into the heart, and from there into the spirit. And it's just a wonderful experience. It's a grace that we've been given, and that we should all enjoy. So I'm going to finish with the following question to all of us. Where do you go from here when you leave the church tonight? Okay? Where do you go from here? And the first letter of St. Peter, chapter 3, verse 15, is with me the whole time. I can't remember when I read it first. It's with me the whole time. And again, I'm just paraphrasing here from memory. You have to be ready with an answer when people ask you why you have the hope that you have. Right? You have to be ready with an answer for the people who ask you why you have the hope that you have. My answer to that question is continually being refined, and it depends, again, on the context, who you're with, the age profile. We're all clever people here, but it's so important, if you're to leave here with anything, is you must spend time meditating and reflecting on that scripture passage. 1 Peter 3:15. You have to have an answer ready for when people ask you why you have the hope that you have. The reason I have it, I've shared a good few bits with you there this evening. I've shared an awful lot with you this evening, but for me, what I believe in, very simply, I believe in the existence of a divine presence in the world and within us, and we call him, her, it's God. I believe that God's Spirit became part of human flesh, and he sent us his Son, Jesus Christ, to show us how to become more God-like in our interactions with each other and with the Word. And Pentecost Sunday was last week, 50 days after Jesus rose from the dead. He gave us the Holy Spirit to continue to enrich us and to give us the energy and the enthusiasm to, again, deepen that personal relationship with Christ, because he is our gateway into becoming more Christ-like. I'm going to finish with a funny story. It involves Mass, it involves a bit of messing, it involves Pat Gilroy. So Pat managed Dublin in 2011, so that was our first All-Irelands in 16 years. 3 years previously, Pat and I won a Club All-Ireland with St Vincent's. Pat was full forward, I was centre back, and I'm a joker, but Pat is definitely a joker too. And I've two quick stories for you. One will give you a sense of Pat's character. Mickey Whelan, who was the manager, told Pat, he was 37 at the time, if he was going to get into the team, he needed to lose about 2 stone, and he needs to stop driving to training and cycle. It was only about 2 miles, to the club ground from his house. So I caught Pat, I was a student at the time, I caught Pat, and he had done well with business, taking his bike out of his big X5 BMW on one of the side streets with his training gear on, and cycling the 200 metres up to the dressing room. And he says to me, if you effing tell Mickey Whelan that you see me doing this, I'll knock the you-know-what out of you. And, but we still joke about that story till now. So I was waiting to get Pat back. We were playing Mayo in a league game a few years later, and we were staying in Westport, and I'm not sure whether you call it a quay at the river, but there's a church there. I think it's St Mary's. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it. Yeah, St Mary's Church. And when we went to play league games of a Sunday, it could be a 2 o'clock throw-in, 3 o'clock throw-in. There would be the itinerary of the weekend would be sent out, and in it was optional go to mass after your breakfast. So there was always a massive, I wouldn't say massive, but there was certainly 9, 10, 11 players would have gone to mass before all of those games, and Pat would have gone as well, Mickey Whelan and a few others. There was announcements in the church after the homily and the second collection was going around, and the announcement was they were looking for volunteers for the new pastoral parish council that they were setting up, and that if anyone wanted to leave their name and number on the special sheet at the back of the church, that I'm going to guess Mary, I can't remember the lady's name, Mary would be in contact with you. So at the end of Mass, I snuck down to the back of the church, and I put down Pat Gilroy, 087, whatever it was, and the rest of the number, you know. So the following Friday, because we would have trained on a Thursday, I get a phone call around lunchtime, and he says, "Did you put my effing number down for the pastoral council in St Mary's Church?" And I says, "I don't know what you're talking about, Pat." And he says, "You bloody did do it. I know it was you." I said, "It wasn't me. It wasn't me." I says, "Well, how did you get on?" And I says, "Well, I started trying to explain to her that one of the players on the team had made a joke, and the lady who was a bit elderly couldn't understand why would somebody joke about a parish pastoral council, that it is incredibly important, obviously, and that she couldn't just get her head around it." So at the end of the conversation, a bit like me with the elderly men and women in St Poppin's nursing home, Pat eventually says to her, "Listen, I wrote my name down at the time. I thought I'd be able to do it, but it turns out I'm too busy with work. I'll come back to you next year." And I know Mary, I think, was happy with that. So listen, thanks very much for listening. We are all pilgrims on a pilgrimage on a journey of hope, and we can't neglect the grace, as we heard in the first reading. We can't neglect the grace that we've been given. Okay, we have to have an answer for people who ask us why we have the hope that we have. And when I was listening to the gospel reading, Bishop Dennis, my earlier years of playing with Dublin, my relationship with Jesus wasn't as mature maybe as it is now, but you'd be praying for results, you know. You'd be praying that if I win this game, I promise I'll go to Mass every day for the next week or two. But thankfully I have evolved from that. But sometimes the lads would ask me, "Ger," and this is a wonderful experience I used to have on the team buses with the Dublin players going to games. The way you play football, you tend to kind of, if I don't get the ball, I tend to get something else, and if you can get both at the same time, even better. But I used to get in a bit of trouble on the pitch, but certainly how I played was a bit Old Testament. And sometimes when you're playing sport, you kind of have to have that bit in you. But I began to pray before all games that ad maiorium Dei gloriam, for the greater of glory God, let me do my best. And then I would pray for the safety of players on both teams, and that if someone had to go to hospital, that it wasn't for my team and it wasn't too serious. Thank you.